Just three ordinary guys trying to understand the crazy world around them. We don't have all the answers, but we've got all the questions. You're listening to Just Add Bourbon with Jimmy, JD, and Brad.
Welcome, everybody, to the Just Add Bourbon podcast. I'm Jimmy Don Kerr.
I'm Brad Broaddus.
And I'm JD Dameron.
And it is another cold, dark Sunday evening here in the hills of eastern Kentucky. And boys, when I say dark, I mean dark. Time went back an hour last night, and it got dark today at like 2 o'clock. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when time goes back or forward or whatever, it wears me out. I can't stand it. I wish we could just leave it alone. Do you guys have an opinion at all on daylight savings time?
It don't bother me. I don't have really, I don't take sides on daylight saving times. I know it really affects some people, but I can sleep anytime, so it don't bother me a bit.
You know, I did hear, I think it was a Native American that made a comment about daylight saving time and said that you can't cut a foot off of the end of a blanket and sew it on the other end and make it any longer. And, you know, it just kind of reminds me of when I was a kid and my great-grandfather, one of the last things he told me was, Epstein didn't kill himself.
Well, that's perfect. That leads us right into the first topic of the day. The Epstein thing is one of the things that we talked about very early on when we started doing this podcast. We talked about Jeffrey Epstein and whether he killed himself or not. And all of a sudden, we have this guy come out. He's a doctor. He comes out. He was hired by the brother of Jeffrey Epstein because they thought some foul play had went on. And he goes on, where I saw it was on Fox and Friends. That's where I actually saw the guy in an interview, but I also heard maybe it was in the New York Post. So he comes out and says, no, his injuries are as if he was killed. He was murdered.
Much more consistent with homicide than suicide.
Right. So from that, the internet has exploded with Jeffrey Epstein memes going along the same lines of what Brad just said, and that was well played, sir. Whatever, JD likes football, but Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. Yeah. And those things are all over the place. So, guys, why do you think that's happening? Why do you think it's exploded in that way?
And the best part about it is it's not just the normal pockets on the internet that you normally get this stuff. I'm seeing people from all political stripes. Mm-hmm. I'm seeing grandmothers sharing this stuff on Facebook or Twitter or wherever. I think that we, the people, have finally figured out how to play this game. That regardless of what gets swept under the rug, what they tell us, no, don't look over here, don't look over there, we figured out through social media and through memetrics how to put this stuff into memes. Because if you look at the memes that are going around, not just about that, but everything. You think about how thought out some of this stuff is. People are taking a lot of information that most people wouldn't read and look into. They'll take a lot of information, simplify that down to a picture, and 5, 6, 10 words. And it's impactful.
You know, it's true. I agree with what you're saying. You know, our attention spans aren't long. And the more we're inundated with information, the harder it is to retain things, right? And so I think it's genius that, you know, the people aren't allowing the media, the mainstream media, to dictate the conversations that's being had on social media. You know,
that was my question, was why isn't this particular thing going away? Because as we've talked before, the news cycle is really quick. You know, they'll come out, there'll be something big. You give it 24 hours, 48 hours probably at the most, and then they're on to the next story. But it's 3 months later, and the Jeffrey Epstein thing is still out there. Now, obviously, this doctor came out, said what he said, but people were ready. You know, when he said that, they were ready, and this meme thing exploded. And why do you think that is? Why do you think the Jeffrey Epstein rings so true with your everyday citizen?
Because I think the people who were involved and around Jeffrey Epstein were so powerful, and they're not happy with the conclusion that this guy, the video cameras were down, the guards were on break, he was on suicide watch. I mean, it's just too many coincidences for this to be, he just killed himself. And people aren't going to just accept that. And I think that has a lot to do with it, that people just aren't happy with that this was a suicide. and they want to look deeper into it. And when somebody like Michael Bodden comes out and says that his injuries are more consistent with homicide than suicide, it really legitimizes what they already thought anyway.
And really, my only reservation on this, because I think as far as the way that the information has got out and the way that they have interjected this topic into everything to keep it in the public view, I think that's great. Now, my only reservation on the Epstein thing is if the focus stays on did he kill himself or did somebody else kill him, you've got all these people that he's was intertwined with that are still walking free. You know, it could become a look over here, don't look over there, if we keep the focus on did he kill himself or not.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I thought it was, because like I said, we've all said none of us think he did, but the people that he was tied to, I think, is what makes that story kind of keep lingering in the mind of the public. And I just like that we've come up with this way through memes to kind of keep it going, because it is pretty entertaining. And before we move on to the next topic, Brad used a word that I've got to go back and address. Did you say memeisms, or you said something? Memetrics, excuse me. Did you make this word up?
Yeah, I feel stupid right now.
I feel dumb. Like, I was saying, meme stuff. Brad breaks out memetrics. I'm like, what? Where did you come up with memetrics? Did you please tell me you read that somewhere? Brad's just a genius.
I don't know if it's real or not, but it definitely sounds legit.
It sounded legit. I mean, like, I totally bought it when he said it.
Well, I'm going to run with it then. I might try to make a couple other words, and if y'all don't know what they are, then I'll sound like I'm smart.
Well, that's not going to be hard to do, I can tell you.
Well, it wasn't.
No, basically, this information gets out, and you've got these, whatever you want to call them, the anons, or on the internet, a lot of people will call them the autist. It's not a reference to autism. It's just you've got these internet wizards who will take information and they will take it and turn it into something that is palatable for people, like JD said, with these short attention spans that we've got the attention span of a goldfish, to where you can look, you can have an image, and bang, and that's right there. Yeah. And the information that these people are able to find, I mean, they will dig and find this stuff in a very short amount of time, anything that's put out there. It's been breaking news about the whistleblower. They've been breaking it in the last couple of days, what this guy's name was. These anons on the internet were blasting this guy's name a month ago.
That guy a month ago.
And they do that with pretty much everything. But I think the memes, really what you're seeing right now is it is almost a war that's not being fought with bullets and tanks. Well, it's actually a different way to get information out. Yeah. And I know that sounds silly, but think about how powerful these things are.
I want to share 3 of them, man. I'm sorry. But these are funny to me. All right. This one is a picture of like a spear. It says, in 2007, a bowhead whale was killed in Alaska by local whalers. They found a tip of harpoon embedded in its blubber that dated back to the 1800s. A whale had survived 130 years. Then died 12 years before Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. And the other one, okay, I want to share 4 of them. One of them is the Wheel of Fortune puzzle, and it looks like Epstein didn't kill himself.
That's great. Yeah, you got to put that one out on the page.
This other one says, the babirusa is a wild pig whose tusks can grow so long they curve backwards and ultimately impaling their skulls, and accidentally killing themselves. Unlike Jeffrey Epstein, who was killed on purpose. But my favorite is a picture of Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Clinton sitting at the table. And it has a video star or radio over Jeffrey Epstein, a video star over Bill Clinton. Video killed a radio star. Those are my I love. Yeah, no, people are hilarious, man. There's a lot of creative, funny people out on the internet.
Yeah, there really are. I said because it's been really entertaining, and there's a lot of really creative people sitting in this room to come up with the word memetrics, and I'm gonna leave it at that. All right, so
Brad blushed just now.
Now, one thing I was going to say, and you being in the comedy pocket, right? You know, I grew up listening to a lot of comedians, and I thought, man, these guys are brilliant. They're so funny. And, you know, at one time on Twitter, I told some jokes on Twitter and had a decent following on there. And what I found was the people, the moms and dads that were sitting at home and working 40 hours a week and have never been on a stage in their life were the most brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, comedy genius, to the point to where a lot of the mainstream comedians weren't even funny to me anymore. People are absolutely brilliant. And now, because we've got the internet and we have access to everything, it's all out there. I mean, you can do pretty much anything now.
Have you ever been on Reddit? And the people put a picture on there, like a selfie that says roast me. And it's some of the most brutal, oh my, tongue lashings you'll ever hear, man. It's hilarious. These guys are ruthless. But yeah, you're right. Like, what the internet has done is really opened up the door for, you know, the mom and the dad that work 40 hours a week, because, you know, now they can be funny for everybody, you know, and everybody can get to it.
Well, how else would you have three guys up here in the mountains in eastern Kentucky, you know, that could sit here and talk into a microphone about whatever?
Germany.
Right. And make up words like my metrics.
And make up words.
I love it. All right, guys, let's move on to this next. And it has, you know, sort of has some Jeffrey Epstein ties, sort of. And then but it does go back to some of the things that we've talked about in the last few weeks. Is there was one of the largest human smugglers in the world was taken down. The headline says, human smuggler indicted on U.S. charges and arrested as part of a Brazilian takedown of significant alien smugglers. So basically, there was a human trafficker, one of the largest in the world, who was basically moving people through Brazil and eventually to the United States. And the Brazilian police force, along with help of the U.S., were able to take this guy down.
Yeah, the Al-Mamun, I think was his name, was supposedly one of the most prolific human traffickers in the world. And it sounds like that they were taking people from South Asia and elsewhere, bringing them into Brazil, and then bringing them into the U.S. This was a big operation. I think they froze 42 bank accounts. I mean, this is a big deal. And again, we ask this question almost every episode. Did anybody hear about that?
No.
Have you seen anything on TV about it?
Crickets.
So why not?
Well, it goes back to what we say every week, man. This stuff is never on TV, and this is going on in a big way right now, all over the world, led by the U.S., and they're bringing these traffickers down.
To answer your question, I don't know why. I don't know the players involved, but I know if it's ever anything else, it's like you said before, find out who you can't criticize, you'll find out who rules you. So I have a feeling that there's some major players calling shots in this thing.
And you've got people getting busted. This is all over the world. This is everywhere. And I happen to think all these things are probably intertwined at some point. But big scale, small scale, you know, you got this guy who was supposed to be one of the world's biggest human traffickers, but you've had the Epstein, which we were talking about earlier. All of the other things we've covered over here. You know, there was also, last month, there was an Arizona official that was indicted for human smuggling that was bringing pregnant women. He was bringing them over from the Marshall Islands to give birth in the U.S. and then putting the babies up for adoption. And the guy ended up getting charged with a number of different things. He was illegally obtaining services from the Arizona medical system, falsely claiming that the women were residents of Arizona when they weren't. I mean, they got him on conspiracy, theft, forgery, human smuggling, sale of a child. So, I don't know, but, you know, one of the questions that we asked last week, and the issue of all of these kids and all the trafficking, the porn site that went down, where are these kids coming from? Some of those questions could probably be answered in some of these busts.
And I almost feel like it's not a coincidence that the website was busted, and now this cat is going down. But I'm still going to go back to where's the coverage. I mean, it just seems like a huge injustice that the AP's not covering it, Reuters is not covering it, US Today's not covering it, Fox News isn't covering it, CNN's not covering it. I mean, because, Donald Trump sneezed at a press conference to cover that. It's just crazy to me.
This is real news.
Right. There's not much more important to me than young lives being affected this way. So, to me, I can't figure it out, man.
So, all of these busts have been taking place in the last 3 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why is that it's just now happening in the last 3 years? And I know we'll get into the border stuff later. This isn't about starting an argument about the border debate.
Right.
But why is it that the same people that want the open borders are the ones that want the administration out that's going after the human smugglers worldwide? No,
I mean, I think the President Trump is doing a good job. At least his Justice Department is doing a good job of rounding these people up. And we ought to give credit where credit's due, and he deserves credit there.
Yeah, because he really has. Since he's been president, this is one thing. Brad and I have had this discussion a whole lot because you just realize, and it never gets covered, of how many of these rings have been brought down since Trump was president. And I think really started by Jeff Sessions. I think Jeff Sessions was kind of all over that in the beginning too and really kind of got things going. And then Epstein, the website, this going down, like you said, JD, I think it's all tied together.
And that's the part I don't understand because we can debate all day about a number of different issues, but just on this one topic, I think it's obvious that there has been a change in the human trafficking as far as they've been going after these people. There's been a number of people busted. Here, overseas, we're working with other countries to do this. And of all the things that we could argue about, I just feel like this could be one thing that we could say, okay, look, hey, we hate Trump and we think he says mean things and we don't like the way he does this, this, and this. But this is a great thing that we're helping because we will sit and talk about slavery from 150 years ago, which was a real thing and needs to be talked about. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that that's not an important issue to talk about what happened in the past. But you're talking about millions that are in slavery right now. And there's actually something being done about it. Not just all us. This is being done with other countries. But why can't we talk about it? Like, why can't that be on the news?
Again, I don't know. I don't. But it's frustrating to know this happened and it's not being reported. This is one of the most important issues I can think of. And I'm, regardless of party, if you can't say, you know what, let's give them credit where credit is due about these issues, then you're not a very good person, much less a very good Democrat or a very good Republican. You're not a very good person if you can't give somebody credit for doing this job.
Yeah, because this is not right or left. This is about our kids and people just being trafficked. Like
this is about people, period, man.
Yeah, it's modern day slavery. It's not right. And the news should be covering it, but you're just not going to see it.
But do you think, because they know it's going to unify people, do you think that might be the problem?
That could be a possibility because they don't want an issue because they
it's
do
a unifying
spend so much
issue
time dividing us that this is an issue that could bring us all
Right.
together.
I think it would unify us, number one. I think the other issue that we're going to deal with is the people who would have to cover it would be the media.
Have to give credit.
So then they're going to have to go back and explain. Now, what we just talked about Epstein, if we bring stuff to the forefront, I think they'll start bringing, once they figured out how this worked with the Epstein didn't kill himself, that you will see a number of other things that come out that people say, hey, no, we're not moving on. We want answers on this.
Right.
And I think you will go all the way back to the mid-'80s and the Franklin cover-up with why did the media not cover these things? And I think that's what the biggest fear is people having to stand up and say, hey, we stood down and didn't talk about this because we were told not to talk about it.
Right. I mean, I believe that, but I also believe that we've been so ingrained that if we agree at all with the other party, then we must be just like them. And you must be a Democratic sympathizer if you give Obama credit for anything he did. You must be a Republican sympathizer if you give Trump credit for anything he done good. It's just not true, man. It's not the way life isn't black and white all the time, right? So there are gray areas. And, I get in a lot of political debates, and I'm sure you guys are shocked by that. But, and I'll be saying something about Trump or Obama, and they'll say, well, what about Hillary deleting her emails? Like that validates their point about whatever we're talking about with Trump or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, she should go to jail. And I think it goes back to this too, that people are just so afraid to give credit to the other party. It's silly. It's a silly, silly argument to have.
And that's what's so silly, is I've told both of you many times on here, I bet you $1 million to one that we will agree on 90% of the issues. And the other 10% that we don't necessarily agree on, we agree with the outcome. We don't necessarily agree with the way to get there. That's a lot of the debate, is the steps to actually get. We all want the same thing at the end of the day. It's just how do we get there? That's the difference. But that's the 10% that the mainstream media and everybody else tries to rip us apart with, to try to divide us, and that is wrong. And people, if you can't wake up and see that, I don't know what to tell you.
That's where it's at. I mean, they will only pick that slice of the pie that we're going to fight over, that we don't agree over, right? Because, I mean, we could sit here, and I know you all listening to the show, you think probably me and JD, because we're on opposite ends of the spectrum on a lot of things, that we sit and bigger back and forth. We sit and talk. We're right in line on a number of things. On most things, our only arguments are on how you get there. We have very few arguments on the finish line, right? And the same thing with Jimmy Don. I mean, and we've got to get past that. And it's the only thing that you're going to get is just that little sliver of what we can't agree on. And that's what every election's about. That's what every debate on anything's about.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything else to say, man. I just agree. That's it.
We'll move on to our next topic, because I do want to get, we got an election coming up here in the state of Kentucky, and I do want to get to that and let us spend some time, because I think that will be some interesting debate. And we might actually have a few differences there. But there was a story that came out this week about something that happened down in Mexico.
Oh, yeah.
And the son of El Chapo, there was a raid. They had 35 elite Mexican military troops descended on a home in the city of Culiacan, no idea if that's right, to carry out a U.S. extradition order on El Chapo's son, Ovidio Guzman Lopez, who was inside the property with 3 others. Now, the raid essentially led to a counterattack by the cartel that El Chapo began and ran, and what he's in jail for now, and his son, who they went after, was, I'm sure a lieutenant or something like that in there. But basically, it got so bad from the cartel, they were bombing apartment buildings. They had like homemade tanks, whatever, that they arrested this guy and then had to ask him to call off his people and let him go because they couldn't get out to save lives. That is one of the nuttiest things. So the cartel, a drug operation in Mexico, stopped an elite Mexican military force from actually arresting the son of El Chapo and getting him out of there. And actually had to have him call. There's a video of it where they had him call and asked him to stand down. So would you please tell them to stand down? Did y'all see that?
Yeah, and I think, I don't know this, but I feel like when we say the Mexican drug cartel around this area, people don't really understand what we're talking about or understand the kind of power they have in these border towns. This is one of those stories that really bring to life how powerful they are. I mean, they're backing down military power, guys. I mean, and you're talking about some people that don't have no rules of engagement. Like, they'll mow you down right now, especially over, somebody as high up as, I'm going to call him El Chapo Jr., So to see that kind of firepower be available to them, it's really eye-opening to me.
You're talking about during this arrest, You would think the first thing when you arrest El Chapo's son that you're going to throw handcuffs on him. You know the first thing they did? They asked him to make a phone call to call the dogs off because the Sinaloa cartel, they had seized control of the city. They took hostages. They blocked interstates with burning vehicles and laid siege to a housing complex for the families of military personnel. So my question is, who really controls Mexico? I mean, you're talking about, can you imagine a situation, and there's been multiple stories that have come out since then where, you know, from the Mexican government, and they'll say, well, this was some rogue guys that did this, and then the other one said, well, you know, it wasn't well planned out, or really? I mean, could you imagine if our Navy SEALs and Green Beret and our special forces went to arrest somebody and they had to capitulate to their demands and say, hey, never mind, we're going to let you go.
They didn't capitulate to their demands. They went in and said, hey, we need you to call the dogs off. They never even got him arrested. They walked in and said, hey, please call the people off. They're going to kill everybody here, because they didn't have a good exit route. They didn't have anything.
They ended up freeing Guzman, and they retreated. The military retreated.
That's crazy.
From the cartel. And this is the cartel that is just on the other side of the border where we're at. And it sounds like part of this, the reason they were trying to arrest him, which obviously they've got his dad in prison here, but was some pressure from the U.S. because they wanted to
extradite him.
They wanted to extradite him, but they wanted to stop the flow of fentanyl across the border. So it just, if they have more power than the military, right? If they can make the Mexican military stand down, then how much influence do you think that they have with politicians in Mexico and possibly on this side of the border?
Oh, there's no doubt, man. I said they are running the show. There is no doubt. I mean, I couldn't believe that when I read it, and I thought about the same thing you did. If that was one of our Navy SEALs, Green Berets, whomever, they'd be in, have him arrested, and gone before anybody even knew they were there. But these dudes roll in. They find out they're coming. Somehow they find out they're in town. Had to get tipped off somehow. The cartel had to know somehow. And then run in, and they blocked off the streets with burning cars. They blocked every exit route. They could not get out of that town.
It was almost such a comedy of errors that it almost looked like that. It almost looked like that they set it up to do it, just to act like they were trying to do something to take out the cartel, and then it was set up that way. I mean, because how humiliating would that be for the Mexican military to have to stand down to a cartel?
So let me take this in a little bit different direction, maybe. And I don't know about Mexican drug or gun control laws, but is there a possibility of that ever happening here in America? You know, with these groups like the concern, what are they called, the sovereign citizens and such, where they get all this firepower stockpiled, and they become so powerful that they're backing down whole police forces and police departments.
I think that could happen if they build up a big enough stockpile.
Right.
But what would happen right after that?
They're going to get their ass
is the U.S. military would roll in and end that pretty quick. That would be the difference, I think. I mean, could that happen? Could a militia or whatever back down a police force? I think absolutely. I think that could potentially happen.
And that might happen in this case.
But normally where you're going to see that happen is places where guns are banned and only
the criminals have them.
The criminals are going to have the guns, because you've got enough law-abiding citizens that carry guns here that before it gets out of hand, you've got a number of people.
Because the last place that, if anybody came in, the last place they would come to is Eastern Kentucky.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, my grandma had shotguns.
Sure.
You're getting shot. You know, you come in, they're not coming here. They'll go to one of these cities where the gun laws are banned and they can blow up whoever because they're not going to get shot back at. But I think that's an interesting thing.
No, these militias, though, I think sovereign citizens or in Tennessee where the gun laws are pretty liberal or pretty open. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I just think we need to maybe take notice of what's going on at the border because of their criminal activity. Once they get so strong, it's a lot easier to keep them weak than to back them down once they get strong and bring them back down. It's like cleaning the house. If you clean the house, it's a lot easier to maintain it than it is to let it pile up and then clean it all over again. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think that's a valid point. So I don't want to get too far down that road with the gun debate because I really do want to. I want to talk about the election that's coming up. I had the chance yesterday, went over to Paintsville, and everybody in Martin County knows this. If you're from out of here, I am the chairman of the Martin County Water District, and it's been a big mess here the last few years with the water system. When we came in, I always tell the story. I got sworn in on January 2nd, went to my first meeting January 3rd, and 5 days later, the whole system went down. So that's been a big part of my life for the last 2 years. Well, the governor was coming through town on a bus tour because the election's Tuesday, and I basically got to meet the entire Republican ticket, which was pretty interesting. I actually had a pretty good time. It was nice to get to talk to some of these people. I was there because I was able to get 5 minutes with Governor Bevan to talk about some things with the water. Myself and a couple other water board members were there. And we got to hear everybody do their speeches and all that. But this is a hotly contested governor's race. Now, the rest of the guys, as far as who I met, the gentleman that's running for Attorney General against Greg Stumbo.
Daniel, I can't think
starts with a C, but he was great. He was very impressive to listen to talk, as well as just to talk to. He was a very impressive man. Mike Harmon's the auditor. I have a particular interest in that race because one of the people he's running against says specifically that if she wins, she's coming to Martin County to audit the water district, which is fine. I would welcome her in. And so I'll tell them the same thing I told Harmon's people is when you can come and audit, I don't care. I think that's great. Come and audit it. And if there's anything there and you find something, great. But they also charge for that. You will be the last people that I pay. Just understand that too, because we have audits going on ourselves. So, but the governor's race has become hotly contested, and never in the history of the state of Kentucky has a Republican governor been reelected. Never. It's never happened in the history of our state. If Bevan was to win, that would be the first time it's ever happened. From all I can tell, Bevan's actually done a pretty decent job. We've had some job growth. His values align more with mine than maybe Brashear's does. There's a couple things that Brashear wants to do that Bevan doesn't. A lot of that, like sports gambling in the state. We bet on horse racing, but we can't bet on sports. I think that's a little hypocritical myself. You know, Bevan doesn't want that at all. He doesn't want gambling at all. The biggest issue, however, is the teacher, the pension.
Far and away the biggest issue.
And I am married to a school teacher. And JD, here's the part where maybe you and I can have some friendly debate on. I know the teachers hate to hear me say this, but what Matt Bevan's trying to do is the right thing. He is the first administration in probably 20 years that has fully funded that pension. Everybody prior to Matt Bevan was dipping into that money to fund other projects. And what he's saying is that we can't continue with what we've got. We're not going to be able to fund this pension in the next 20, 30 years if we don't change something. And he's not wrong.
So I've listened to two gubernatorial debates. I don't know how many there have been, but I have listened to the last two. What stands out to me is like Bevan is a very smart guy. Like when it comes to numbers, I think he's a lot like you. He knows the numbers. He knows what he's talking about. But man, he's so hard to like.
He's one of the best speakers that I've ever heard in person. As far as when he is giving his stump speech, he's very good at it. I've always said Obama was one of the best orators that I'd ever heard. I mean, Obama could give a speech and he would suck you in. Mm-hmm. Bevan's a lot like that. But he has said, when he gets out on his own, when he's just off the cuff, he has said some dumb things about teachers, about, when they were doing the strike, the whole thing.
Yeah, I think Bevan is one-on-one is excellent when he speaks. He's a great speaker. And from what I've heard, anybody that has been around him says that he's a dynamic guy, that he's a great speaker. I like the fact that he is a businessman that has employed a lot of people. I almost feel like sometimes that when he gets on the big stage, that he tries to take on the Trump persona, right? And that only works with Trump, whether people like it or not. There's almost a science to it in the way that Trump lays stuff out. He can be brash in a way that not just anybody can pull off. And I feel like that sometimes Bevan comes out almost trying to be like Trump, and it doesn't come off well.
Oh, no, I think that's exactly it.
I mean, from watching the debate, I was really turned off by his personality, which I know you're not voting for personalities. You're voting for official. But that personality does go in office. And I also disagree with him on the gambling. I feel like it could bring a lot of revenue into the state.
I think you could solve the pension crisis with it.
Right. And so then it goes back to, why don't we do that? So if the pension crisis can be solved, and Bashir wants to do that, then why vote for Bevan, who doesn't want to do it, and he wants to continue down this road? The definition of insanity is to continue to do the things that you've always done and expect different results. So why would I want to vote for a guy who wants to continue to do the same thing and expect different results? When we can add, legalize marijuana to our revenue, tax base, we can add gambling to our tax base.
Well, his response to that is...
Dead on arrival.
Well, my dealings with him, and I've had a few personal dealings with him, because I don't necessarily disagree with you. When you watch him like in a debate, he comes across kind of arrogant. But I can tell you when you sit down and talk to him one-on-one, he is incredibly personable, and he's very smart. And
that shows up on the debate stage. How smart he is not a question for me.
He has helped me. I got 5 minutes with him yesterday. And the 5 minutes that I got was to talk to him about the current situation we're in. And, if he was in our shoes, how he would look at that. And he gave me a very thoughtful answer. And it was different than what I expected I was going to get. And that may be something we can talk about down the road if we ever do a show on the Martin County water crisis. Maybe we can talk about the advice he gave me. It was different than what I thought he was going to tell me, to be totally honest with you. So that one-on-one, but I think, JD, what you're saying, because I don't disagree. I actually disagree with Bevan on that. But I don't know if that's all Bevan. He can't, the House won't even get together to bring a vote. I think Thayer's his name. He could get that together and get that voted on. That's really not a Bevan thing. Now, Bevan might veto it when it got to him, but I think you at least need to start having that conversation because all the states around us have legalized it and are making millions of dollars off of it in tax revenue.
Well, I think on the gambling part of it, I respect either or. Like if you have a stance on it and you say that we shouldn't gamble, then we shouldn't gamble on horse racing or anything. But how it's always been in the past is everybody's like, okay, well, we know we don't want to get involved in gambling, but now the horse racing's cool, right?
So we also have a lottery system that funds our education.
So, I'm not a gambler myself, but if you say, I don't believe in any gambling, then I respect that. But if you say, well, we can gamble on the horses, because that's a big thing here in Kentucky, but we can't gamble on, college sports or whatever. I think you got to pick a side on that. But on the teacher issue, my sister-in-law is a teacher. My sister's a principal. My mother's a teacher. I come from a long line of teachers, and I have as much respect for teachers as anybody. I don't know what the answer is, and I'm definitely not an expert on this subject. But I will say in the past, this thing has built up because we've had years and years of legislators and governors who have kicked the can down the road so they didn't have to address it. And I don't know how to fix it. I do respect the fact that he's trying to do something about it, knowing that he's going to get kicked in the teeth for it. But the issue is we talk about, it's just like the conversation we had with Social Security, is we can talk about what's fair and what's not fair all day long. But we're going to get 10, 15, 20 years down the road. There's just not going to be any money there. Something's going to have to be done about it, and I don't know how you fix it.
So to revisit this gambling issue, I remember in the 90s in the state of Kentucky, they wanted to give out a certain number of permits where there was casino-style gambling, and they were all to the horse track races, which seems absolutely hypocritical to me because that's like just feeding Big Brother and leaving Little Brother without any money.
Well, but they also have I think the reason they wanted to do that is because they already have the base set up to do it. It's already set up for them. It was just easier from a revenue standpoint to go ahead and take the places that already had the groundwork for this and let them start there.
Right, but if Mike over here at Inez wants to open up his pool hall and have casino-style gambling, then Mike should be allowed to, in my opinion. And it goes back to my argument always with Walmart. And I remember in the early 2000s, late 90s, people signed these petitions to keep Walmart out of their towns. And I always thought that was crazy. I thought if you really wanted to hurt Walmart, you let them build, and then you protest, and hopefully the people won't go there. They'll support mom and pops instead. And that's how you hurt Walmart, right? So the same thing with this big style gambling. If you really want to hurt or stop gambling, you can't allow. Well, I mean, it's 2019, right? So if you don't want to shop at Walmart, then don't go to Walmart, and that hurts their business. So if you don't want to gamble, you know how to hurt gambling? How to hurt casinos?
Don't gamble.
Don't gamble.
Just don't go. Right? Stay home. So people, it's just 2019. If I want to get on the internet and gamble, I can do it right now. Without ever leaving my house, without leaving this chair, I can get on this laptop with this phone right here, and I can gamble all I want to. Having casinos in the state of Kentucky is not going to stop or start people from gambling, in my opinion. What it's going to do is keep that revenue at home.
That's right, because people are already leaving the state and going into these other
states.
And spending
Yeah, I do. I've been to West Virginia over to Cross Lanes 5-6 times.
Right. So, do you see a scenario with gambling to where your Christian base here in Martin County that's never gambled, if they legalize gambling, that they're going to run out next weekend and go to a gambling boat?
No.
That's not going to happen.
No, and the gambling issue for me, I do disagree with Bevan on. I think Brashear's probably right on with that because I think it could generate a lot of revenue. The medical marijuana issue, Bevan's against that. I'm actually for that too. I think, especially from a medical standpoint, I think that's a good thing. I think that should be explored.
And I think it fights the opioid epidemic that we've been doing the shows
that we've
on.
been doing a series on. I do agree with Bevan on the teacher's pension, that it has to be fixed. He isn't kicking the can down the road. Now, he said some stupid things. But at the end of the day, I don't care about that. I care about the action. Mm-hmm. Actions speak louder than words. He's trying to fix it. So that part I like. He's pro-life. I am too. Some of the most important, I guess, fundamental moral beliefs that I have, he has too. And I feel like maybe that's not the same. I also don't like what Brashear did with Big Pharma.
Hold on now. Let me talk about the pro-life thing. We're talking about a gubernatorial race. Mm-hmm. We're not talking about the Congress or Senate. So that's like voting for the sheriff because he's pro-life.
Oh, no, I'm not voting for him because I'm just saying...
I'm saying it's not... Abortion is not a state issue. It's a federal issue.
But it should be a state issue.
But it's not, though. So let's vote for policies, not personalities, right? That's what you was talking about?
No, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Right.
But I believe I'm talking about from a moral standpoint, what I'm looking for in a candidate, while I don't necessarily agree with the whole gambling and all those things, the other stuff is important to me.
Right.
And I think that he's moving us in the right direction. I think he's been able to do some job creation. The abortion, I was just throwing that in there as something that I like. It's not really an issue that's going to keep me from voting for him or not. Or really, probably on a national level, it would mean a little more too.
Sure.
But on a state level, I'm more concerned about what can happen here. Now, the biggest, and again, as far as Bevan is concerned, Brashear says that if he's elected governor, he's going to come and put the Martin County Water District down here in receivership. That's no good for anybody here in Eastern Kentucky. I'm here to tell you right now, you think your water bills have gone up now? Wait till he puts us in receivership. I mean, you're really going to see him go up. I can't back that because that's what he said. His bunch came down here and did an investigation. Brashear's bunch did. Came down here and did an investigation. Joke. Complete joke. We were a political football.
Right.
Joke. I can't vote for him. Those are 2 reasons I can't vote for him. Then he worked with the company that represented the big pharma bunch that just had the settlement.
But that's not true. He didn't represent them.
He worked for the firm.
So he got hired by the firm while that case was while that case was going on. And that is a black eye, but now he wasn't representing Purdue Pharma. He got hired by the firm while that case was going on. So, and that is the accusation that Bevan made against him during the debate, that you represented Purdue Pharma, which is, for you that don't know, the producers of Oxycontin and fentanyl and all these other opioids.
Do you think that would have anything to do with any decisions he would make working for a firm that did represent Purdue Pharma?
I don't know.
Or let me ask
he don't work there no more.
Let me ask you on the flip side. I don't know the answer to this. I'm just asking the question. If it was on the flip side, and if Bevan worked for a firm that wanted to shut down coal mining in eastern Kentucky, and he said, well, I wasn't a part of that case, but I did work for that firm, how would you feel about that? Would you tie him in any way? Fair enough.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I think that's fair if he didn't actually represent.
Right.
And I think that's really what this is going to come down to, the election of who people.
Now let me ask you all a question then, on a national level. If Trump had a guy that was close to him that represented Purdue Pharma in a case, would that bother you all? Knowing that Purdue Pharma picked out the Appalachian Mountains to sell these pills? Because they did do that.
Yeah.
They targeted us.
They did. For sure they did. And that's a good point. I don't think that
so
would
you wouldn't affect you?
I don't think so.
Because that's the true thing, by the way.
Yeah.
Giuliani did represent Purdue Pharma in the national lawsuit.
And it depends on the position, too. You know, you've got some people that are attorneys in one specific case, but their capacity in the government is something other than that. Right. So
that's true.
If it was something over medical, if it was something over medical and Medicaid and whatever, and they represented something that we didn't agree with, and then they ended up being the Surgeon General,
right?
Then I would have an issue with that. Right. But if they were in another capacity in the government, it wouldn't be as big of a deal.
That makes sense.
Right.
But, you know, this is a little off topic for what we're talking about. But I just want to throw this in here. Is we're seeing a lot of these people getting busted up in this Medicaid and Medicare fraud, all of this medical stuff. I just wonder, as this stuff gets lined out, if these people are getting busted, could that in itself affect the cost of medical expenses? You know, as you
I think medical expenses are almost like oil at this point. Like, well, there's a tree got blew over on 292. Your oils, or your gas is going up. Your copay's going up on your blood pressure pills. You know.
But you know what I'm getting at, because we have the conversations a lot of times about free medical and not. I know, you know, we bicker back and forth about that stuff, right. But really, I just wonder how much of this stuff are the high cost because of the corruption that's involved in it. So if some of this stuff gets knocked out, are we going to see a difference in prices in medicine?
You would hope so.
Going to the doctor, going to the hospital?
A lot of times when things go up,
they never come down.
They never come back down. I would like to believe that would be true, but who knows? But on the state elections, I find it interesting that both candidates for governor have spent their weekend in eastern Kentucky. They think that's where the race is going to be won or lost.
That's how tight it is. I just tell you, looking at this gubernatorial race, I'm not a Bevan fan, but I'm not really a Bashir fan either, guys. I don't trust him. And I said policies over personalities, but do you ever get that feeling about somebody? You're like, man, I just don't trust this cat. And I don't know why, but that's just how I feel about Andy Bashir.
Well, I thought his dad was shady. I just didn't, and I don't like Andy Bashir. You know, at the end of the day, we may disagree on some of the policies, but it is important that you get out and vote. Yeah. If you're listening, go vote.
This is where it's at. I mean, you know, everything, just like I said, I think states' rights is a huge thing.
Yeah.
And beyond the state, at the local level, what we do. You know, we sit and we complain all the time about what legislators are doing. But what are we doing? What do you know about the local politicians? What do you know about our representatives in Frankfort? And for the most part, most people don't know anything about what's going on. We can complain about the president and Congress and Senate, and I think that that's where it's at, is bringing this stuff back to a state level. And as far as I'm concerned with Bevin, there's things I like, there's things I don't like. The way that he's handled some of this stuff, I think that it's probably the right message, wrong delivery.
Right. But
yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I usually kind of have an idea myself of what I think is going to happen, and I really don't know.
What you're saying reminds me of the old Benjamin Franklin quote that says, people get the government they deserve. Because people don't vote, or people, vote crazy. But, it just comes back to that, guys. Get out and vote, no matter what. If you vote Republican, if you vote Democrat, whatever you vote, make sure your voice is heard.
Yeah, it's one of the most important things of our democracy. So get out there and vote. So before we roll into the college football picks, I do want to tell y'all a quick story.
Okay.
And then potentially a business idea. Y'all ready?
Oh, I'm ready.
All right. So Friday, my daughters are real into makeup palettes. Okay? And there's these people they see on YouTube that do this makeup. It's usually guys that do this makeup, and then they'll come out and sell these pallets.
The mechanics on the weekend.
JD's about to be doxxed here on this episode.
Yeah, we're getting ready to dox JD right now. No, so I have made the mistake in the past of not taking this seriously. And they want these things for Christmas, right? So I've made the mistake of not taking this serious and not really paying attention and not being able to get what they want. Or having to go to eBay and paying triple the price of what it originally sold for. So Friday, I get all prepared, right? I've got pictures of what they want. I go in. I make an account on this website because you got these two guys have come together, finally have come together, and are putting out this product. I start. It goes on sale at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So I run down at 12:30. I run down, grab my lunch. I've got it back. I'm set up. I'm on the site. I've created an account. I have my PayPal account already set up. I'm ready to pay. And I'm clicking on the link, like this collection. I'm clicking on it the whole time, making sure it works, making sure I know where to go. 12:59, I click on it. The website crashed.
No.
For the next 30 minutes, I sat there and hit refresh. Finally, I get in. Takes me another 30 minutes to actually get the items I need into the cart. Site crashes again. Refresh. Then all of a sudden, I'm like, this screen pops up. I'm in a virtual line. I didn't know that was a thing. I'm in a virtual line. Says, do not refresh this page. And which was really hard not to do, by the way. Because I've been sitting there refreshing for an hour.
Right.
And I was like, I'm sitting there doing that. So it says, don't refresh this page. Well, for another hour, I'm sitting there staring at this page. I can barely work. Because I'm worried about, I got to check out. Then I get in there. Finally, it pops up. Here's a code. Well, don't text it to my phone. It texts it to Amy's. So I have to call Amy. So anyway, 3.5 hours later, these girls are going to get the Christmas present that they asked for. Hopefully they don't listen to the show because I told them that the website crashed and I couldn't get it. So what that brings me to is I think the JAB podcast needs to develop its own makeup line. And if we do that, Brad is the most creative of all the three of us. Now, Brad can draw and he can do a lot of cool stuff. So I think that Brad needs to come up. We'll paint our faces. We'll start doing YouTube videos along with the JAB podcast. I think JD, I think that's right up your alley.
If Brad can make me look pretty, we got a winner.
Look, man, I'm creative. I'm not a magician.
But that was one of the nuttiest things that I've ever done.
Yeah.
For a makeup palette.
And you thought it was just your girls watching that, right?
Yes. I just never took it serious. But like I said, It's been sold out, and I thought, okay, I'll take it serious, and I'll make sure I get on here and get this. I figured, hell, I've waited a month too long to go in here and get this, and so now it's sold out. Dude, it was sold out. Everything on the site was sold out that night. Everything. we need to come up with something that we can crash a website.
So we have realized that we missed an opportunity. And I really didn't want to announce this tonight, but I'm going to go ahead and break the news here live. Starting December 1st, we will be changing to Just Add Foundation podcast.
We will start doing YouTube videos of us doing JD's makeup, trying to get him ready for the weekend.
And just so everybody knows, those are both false things.
To all you ladies listening, JD says, So, guys, let's do the last segment. Let's get into college football.
I hate to. I
think we're running out of time, guys. I'm not sure we need to talk about this.
So, JD goes 5-0. He went from a 1-4 week to a 5-0 week. And then Brad and I both went 3-2.
Which wasn't bad.
Which is not bad. I mean, a good week. But now you're like, 3 or 4 games ahead of us. So, and this is week 11. Now we're moving into week 11, so there's not a whole lot more games left to try to catch JD, and it's looking like Brad and I are going to be doing something stupid.
For sure.
And I really, really wanted JD to wear that Trump hat. And I swear I did. I really wanted that to happen, but it ain't looking good for us. So last week, guys, we had that. JD posted it because we did the episode on Thursday. This week's games are a little tougher, I thought.
They are.
I really did some searching. I've been waiting later in the day so I can get more spreads. And
this first one, I just don't know, man.
So you've got the first game is number 5 Penn State, who is a 7-point favorite at number 13 Minnesota.
Lions.
JD's rolling with the Lions. All right, Brad, who you got on that one?
I'm going with the Lions.
I'm going to take Minnesota. I feel like Penn State's right for an upset. Or Minnesota's the team that's going to do it. I'm also in last place.
Just for reference, Jimmy Don's picked against Penn State about 3 times this year, and I think he's lost all the 3 times.
I have. The next game, and I think this is a Bearcat, man. It was number 1 LSU at number 2 Alabama. Alabama's a 6-point favorite.
Now, I did pick Alabama to win the national championship, but I'm picking LSU in this game.
LSU looks stout.
I'm taking the Tigers. Just because of that offense, man, is just...
That offense is nuts.
Crazy.
But I'm going to take Bama because I think Bama's defense is legit, and I think that it will slow them down enough. Now, if Tua isn't back, I don't know. I don't know if Bama can...
Whoa. Ain't no caveats here. Who you got?
No, I'm taking Bama.
Okay.
I'm going to take Bama, but, I mean, I'm just saying.
Right.
If Tua's not back, that LSU might walk all over them. Number 19, Iowa. At number 18, Wisconsin. Wisconsin is a 5.5-point favorite.
Go ahead, Jimmy Don.
I think I'm going to take Wisconsin on that one.
I go with the Hawkeyes.
I'm taking Wisconsin.
Then we've got Louisville at Miami of Florida. Miami of Florida is a 6-point favorite. That's a tough one, too.
Louisville.
Ooh, the Dirty Birds. Going Louisville, too.
I go Louisville, too.
Yeah, Louisville's a little better, I think.
I see how you're playing this.
Yeah, he's playing it off. That's why you need to go first on everything, sir.
I'll tell you what. I want to change a pick.
No.
Go ahead. Since he did that, since he showed his hand, he did that. Yes, absolutely.
We're running out of time here, and I figured out what he's doing, so I'm about, 5 games back on you right now?
No, you're only like 2 or 3.
4. I want to take Minnesota in the Penn State game.
Okay.
Yeah, I like it, too. Go ahead.
Shut up. And then the last game, guys, which I will be attending, and I'm looking forward to because it's one of my favorite games of the year. We've got
Cats, baby. Give me the
Tennessee
Cats.
at Kentucky. Kentucky's a 2.5-point favorite. Cats.
Go Big Blue.
Yes.
Go Big Blue, man. I can't pick against Tennessee. Or
Can't pick against
Tennessee. I can't pick Tennessee in any form. So the race is, JD's actually spread it out on us a little bit here the last few weeks. He's actually shown his football knowledge, and he's starting to jump on us a little bit. But, JD, I do want to talk about, before we wrap the show up, I want to talk about the high school team. I know you guys traveled this past weekend, went to Middlesboro. I don't know really what kind of team they were, but I know that you guys came away with the W.
Actually, the last 2 weeks, we didn't talk about the Prestonsburg game.
Oh, that's right.
We really dominated those guys. You know, that was big. When I was in high school, that was the biggest rival we had. Hated Prestonsburg, still hate them.
How long had it been since we even beat Prestonsburg?
We hadn't beat Prestonsburg in like 12, 14 years, but we hadn't played them every year either, you know. But it was good to put them on the mat a little bit and kick them down. And we just physically dominated those guys. This past Friday, we traveled to Millsboro. They got a good football team, man. They're actually coached by Larry French, who's won a couple of state championships. And he's rebuilding that program. And they were 7-2 going into the game, and we were 6-2 or 6-3. So somebody was coming out, with a better record for sure. But we ended up getting that W, and I feel like we really had them scouted well. We played well, had our kids in good position to win, and it was nice to travel 3 hours, get off the bus, and get a W. It makes the ride home a lot better. So really proud of our kids for doing that. Yeah.
Now, you guys roll into the playoffs this coming weekend, right?
Yeah, we had to play Shelby Valley again, who put an absolute butt whooping on us a few weeks back. We watched the film today with the kids, and I still think it's as bad as the scoreboard showed. I think a couple of kids play better, and we're right there in that game. So hopefully we clean things up, and I'm looking forward to playing them again. Like I don't know if it's what it is about my personality or I just like defense, and as a defensive coordinator, there's nothing better than going on the road and walking into somebody's house and laying one on them. So Friday was nice, and I'm looking forward to this Friday.
Good deal, man. We wish y'all the best of luck.
One thing's great. I've got to watch a lot of football games this year. I've been to, I think, all the home games except for one. And I really think a part of the win one for the Gipper speech on Friday that you really need to get in there and say, guys, we need to go out here. We need to knock some heads off. And the most important thing, Epstein didn't kill himself.
That's a
well played.
That's a great place to end. I do want to tell everybody thank you for listening to our opioid series. Those have by far, those have been, we've got some great response from Matt and Summers and James's. I thought James's was great too. I actually got a guy that went to church with growing up and lives in Alabama, Texas, and he said, dude, that was powerful. He said it was good stuff. So we appreciate you guys listening. And as we always end the show, from myself, from JD, from Brad, no matter how bad your week's been, no matter how bad your day's going, if you just add bourbon, it'll get a little bit better. Talk to you guys next week.